High Counselor Zenavec stood before the massive observation window of the Galactic Confederation's Central Command, her crystalline form refracting the light of distant stars. The holographic display before her showed something that shouldn't exist, a single ship traveling through space in ways that defied every known law of physics. High Counselor, her aide Crix chittered, multiple appendages working furiously across various data screens. We've confirmed it again. The vessel isn't using any known form of propulsion. It's as if the aide's vocal chambers clicked in frustration, as if it's simply choosing where to be. Zena's crystalline structure vibrated with concern. After 3 centuries serving as the Confederation's chief diplomat, she had overseen first contact with 17 different species. Each one had followed the same pattern: a gradual emergence into space, followed by the construction of massive fleets. Every civilization, without exception, approached first contact with overwhelming numbers. It was simply the logical thing to do. But not this species, not the humans. "Show me the latest analysis," Zena commanded, her voice resonating through the chamber. The holographic display shifted, showing a sleek vessel approximately 500 meters in length. Its design was unlike anything in the Confederation database, smooth curves blending seamlessly into sharp angles, the entire hull seeming to pulse with a soft, blue-white light. "They're calling it the Concordia," Crix reported. "Our long-range scans indicate a crew of roughly 300, but..." The aide's appendages twitched nervously. "The internal readings make no sense. The ship's internal volume appears to fluctuate, and there are energy signatures we can't even begin to classify." Zena moved closer to the hologram, her crystalline form casting prismatic patterns across the command center. "And they maintain this is a diplomatic vessel." "Yes, High Counselor. Their transmissions have been clear and consistent. They seek peaceful first contact, and..." Crix hesitated. "They say they bring a gift for the Confederation." The chamber's ambient temperature dropped several degrees as Zena processed this information. In all her years of service, she had never encountered a species that approached first contact bearing gifts. Most came armed with demands, thinly veiled threats, or at best, carefully worded treaties. "What do we know about their home system?" Crix projected a new hologram, showing a relatively unremarkable solar system with 8 planets. "They call it Sol. We've had it under occasional observation for centuries, but nothing about their development suggested this level of advancement. They achieved basic spaceflight roughly 200 years ago, established colonies on their 4th planet, and then..." The aide's appendages gestured at the data streams. "They seemed to go quiet. We assumed they had reached their technological plateau." "Clearly," Zena remarked dryly, "we assumed wrong." The hologram shifted again, showing the Concordia's approach vector. The ship had already passed through 3 of the Confederation's early warning systems without triggering a single alarm. It simply appeared on their scans, as if it had always been there. "The Security Council is demanding we dispatch the defense fleet," Crix noted. "The Marshal Clades believe this could be a prelude to invasion." "An invasion?" Zena's crystalline form sparkled with what passed for amusement among her species. "With 1 ship. They argue that we don't know what this ship is capable of." "Precisely." Zena turned from the window, her form casting rainbow refractions across the chamber. "We don't know what they're capable of. Think, Crix. If they possessed hostile intent, why announce their presence at all? Why not simply appear in the heart of Confederation space? They've clearly demonstrated the ability to bypass our detection systems." The aide's appendages stilled as it processed this logic. "What do you recommend?" Zena studied the hologram of the approaching vessel. The Concordia's hull continued its subtle pulsing, like a heartbeat in the void. "We will meet them with diplomacy, not warships. Prepare the contact chamber." She paused, her crystal structure shifting to a more formal configuration. "And Crix, have the xenologists prepare for something unprecedented. I suspect our understanding of what's possible is about to change dramatically." As her aide scurried away, Zena remained at the window, watching the distant point of light that represented the human vessel. In all her years of service, she had learned one crucial truth. Species that arrived in force were usually hiding their weaknesses behind a show of strength. But this? A single ship, approaching openly, offering gifts. Either the humans were impossibly naive, or they were so advanced that they had transcended the need for traditional displays of power. Either possibility was equally terrifying. The real question wasn't why they had sent only one ship. The question was, what could make a species so confident that they didn't need to send more? Zena had a feeling the Confederation was about to find out. The contact chamber of the Confederation's Central Command was designed to overwhelm. Soaring crystalline spires reached hundreds of meters into the artificial atmosphere, while representatives from over 300 species sat in graduated rings that rose like waves around the central platform. The chamber had hosted countless first contact ceremonies, each more grandiose than the last. But never had it felt quite so tense. The Concordia had docked 30 minutes ago, ignoring the elaborate approach vectors and traditional ceremonies. It simply appeared alongside the station, its hull still pulsing with that mysterious blue-white light. No one had emerged yet. High Counselor Zena maintained her formal crystalline configuration as she addressed the assembled representatives. We must remember that different species express themselves in different ways. The humans have. She was interrupted by a soft humming that seemed to come from everywhere at once. In the center of the platform, the air began to shimmer. There was no flash of light, no technological display. Human figures simply began to exist where moments before there had been empty space. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of translated exclamations. Military observers rushed to analyze what had just happened, while xenobiologists frantically recorded data about the human forms. Zena merely observed. 7 humans stood on the platform, each distinctly different from the others. Their clothing was simple but elegant. Flowing garments in various shades of blue and silver. What struck Zena most was their complete lack of protective gear. Every other species required atmospheric adjustments or protective suits during first contact. The humans stood breathing station air as if they had been born to it. One of them stepped forward, a tall figure with dark skin and striking white hair. Greetings, representatives of the Galactic Confederation. I am Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth vessel Concordia. Her voice carried naturally through the chamber, somehow perfectly translated into every language present without any visible technology. On behalf of humanity, we come bearing both greetings and gifts. We have watched, we have learned, and we believe it is time for us to join the greater galactic community. A representative from the Martial Clades rose, their barbed exoskeleton bristling. You claim to come in peace, yet you demonstrate technological capabilities that could be interpreted as hostile. Why do you not follow proper protocols? Why do you not show proper respect with a fleet worthy of this occasion? Captain Chen's smile was gentle, but her eyes held ancient wisdom. With respect, honored representative, we believe that arriving with a fleet would be demonstrating exactly the wrong things. We came in a single ship to show that we trust you. We came bearing gifts to show our desire for friendship. And as for protocols, she gestured, and a small object appeared floating before each member of the assembly. We thought it better to adapt to each of you, rather than expect you to adapt to us. Zena examined the object floating before her, a perfect crystalline structure that resonated at exactly the frequencies her species used for formal communication. Looking around, she saw that each representative had received something specifically tailored to their species' form of interaction. How? The question came from the science coordinator, a gaseous being who floated in a containment field. How did you achieve such precise matter manipulation? Such perfect translation? Such understanding? Captain Chen finished. That's precisely what we've come to share. Humanity spent centuries after achieving spaceflight not in building bigger ships or weapons, but in understanding the fundamental nature of reality itself. We discovered that the universe is far more mutable than anyone imagined. Space, time, matter, they're all expressions of something deeper. something that responds to consciousness itself. She raised her hand, and above the platform, an image formed, not a hologram, but what appeared to be an actual window into another place. Through it, they could see Earth, a blue jewel spinning in space. We could have built a fleet. We could have arrived with enough ships to darken the skies of 1,000 worlds. But what would that have proven? That we can consume resources. That we can build in quantity. Instead, we chose to demonstrate something else, that quality matters more than quantity. That understanding matters more than overwhelming. The chamber had fallen completely silent. Even the most aggressive species representatives seemed captivated. The gift we bring isn't just technology. It's a new way of seeing the universe itself. We don't need a fleet because we've learned that the space between stars is less of a barrier than the space between minds. We came in one ship because one is enough when you understand that distance is an illusion and separation is a choice. Xena felt her crystalline structure vibrating in harmony with the profound implications of these words. The humans hadn't sent a fleet because they had transcended the very need for such displays. They had achieved something far more significant than mere technological superiority. They had achieved understanding. As if reading her thoughts, Captain Chen turned to address her directly. High Counselor, we request permission to share what we've learned with all members of the Confederation. Not as superiors, but as equals. Not as conquerors, but as teachers. Will you hear what we have to say? Xena's response would set the tone for everything that followed. Looking at these humans, who had chosen to demonstrate power through restraint and wisdom through generosity, she knew there was only one possible answer. The age of understanding was about to begin. In the days following first contact, the Confederation's central learning hub had become a nexus of barely controlled chaos. Species that had been historical enemies now sat side by side, their attention completely focused on the lessons being shared by the human teachers. Dr. Maya Patel stood before a diverse group of aliens, her hands moving through the air as she manipulated what appeared to be the fabric of reality itself. The key, she explained, isn't in forcing the universe to bend to our will. It's an understanding that we are not separate from it. Behind her, a section of space folded like origami, creating a window through which they could see a distant nebula in perfect detail. The assembled aliens murmured in their various languages, all perfectly translated by the ambient field the humans had established. In the observation deck above, High Counselor Xena Vec watched with First Martial Chord of the Martial Clades, their vastly different physiologies reflecting their opposing viewpoints. This is dangerous. Chord's chidness armor clicked as he spoke. They're offering to give everyone the same level of technology. Do you understand what that would mean for the balance of power? I understand. Xena responded, her crystalline form pulsing softly, that perhaps we've been thinking about power in the wrong way all along. Below, Dr. Patel was answering questions from the assembled species. A gaseous Mendweaver asked, "But how do you prevent this knowledge from being used for warfare?" Maya's smile was gentle but knowing. The very understanding that makes this technology possible also makes warfare obsolete. You cannot truly grasp these principles while holding on to ideas of separation and conflict. It's like... She paused, considering. It's like trying to hate your own hand. Once you understand the fundamental interconnectedness of all things, the very concept of warfare becomes as foreign as fighting against your own body. In another section of the hub, Captain Chen was demonstrating the Concordia's capabilities to a group of engineering specialists. The ship's hull had become transparent, revealing internal spaces that seemed to fold in on themselves in impossible ways. Your ship, a crystalline engineer observed. It's not just a vessel, is it? No, Chen confirmed. The Concordia is more like a thought-given form, a demonstration of possibility. Every human ship is unique because they're expressions of their crew's combined understanding. We don't build ships anymore. We grow them from our collective consciousness. A warning chime echoed through the hub, causing several species to recoil. A holographic notification appeared before Xena. The Marshall Clades were calling an emergency session of the Security Council. You see, Cord gestured at the notification. Already, there are those who fear what this knowledge could mean. Not everyone will accept such dramatic change willingly. As if in response to his words, a commotion broke out in one of the learning chambers. A representative of the Silicon Collective had attempted to forcibly extract data from a human teaching interface, only to find that the technology simply ceased to exist at their touch. Interesting, Zena observed. Their technology appears to have built-in safeguards that operate on a fundamental level. Which makes them even more dangerous, Cord insisted. They control who gets access to this knowledge. They cooled. We control nothing, Captain Chen's voice came from behind them. Neither had seen her approach. The safeguards aren't programmed. They're inherent. You cannot take this knowledge by force because the very act of trying demonstrates that you haven't understood its basic principles. She waved her hand, and a small object appeared floating between them, a perfect representation of the galaxy, every star and world in exquisite detail. We didn't come here to control or to dominate. We came here to share understanding. But understanding cannot be taken. It must be earned through openness and genuine desire to learn. The galaxy model expanded, showing streams of energy and consciousness connecting every point of light. Your species have spent millennia building barriers between worlds, between peoples, between minds. We're offering something different. The chance to see that those barriers were illusions all along. Below them, Dr. Patel was concluding her lesson. The air around her students was filled with small windows into other realms of possibility, each one a testament to how quickly some species were grasping the fundamental principles. The real question, Chen continued, isn't whether you'll accept this knowledge. The question is, are you ready to accept what it means about everything you thought you knew? Zena watched as a young crystalline being successfully created their first reality window, their joy radiating in prismatic patterns across the chamber. We don't have a choice, do we? This understanding, once it exists, it cannot be unknown. There's always a choice, Chen replied softly. But yes, change is inevitable now. The only question is whether you will fight against it or help guide your people toward it. As if to emphasize her point, more warning chimes sounded throughout the hub. The Security Council session was about to begin, and with it, the first real test of how the Confederation would handle humanity's gift of understanding. The universe held its breath, waiting to see which path they would choose. The Security Council chamber, normally a model of order and protocol, had devolved into barely controlled chaos. Marshall Clade warships had taken up aggressive positions around the Central Command Station, their weapons primed. On the main display, tactical readouts showed similar scenes playing out across Confederation space as various factions chose sides. You cannot simply rewrite the fundamental power structure of galactic civilization. First, Marshal Cord's voice boomed through the chamber. These humans and their gift threaten everything we've built over millennia. Captain Chen stood calmly in the center of the chamber, her presence somehow both gentle and immovable. Around her, holographic displays showed dozens of Confederation worlds where humans were teaching their knowledge, where species that had been bound by technological limitations were beginning to understand their true potential. What you've built, she responded quietly, is a civilization based on scarcity and separation. We're offering you the chance to build something better. A sudden alarm blared through the station. On the tactical displays, 3 Marshall Clade dreadnoughts had opened fire on the Concordia. The energy beams struck the human vessel and simply ceased to exist. Interesting choice, Chen remarked, still perfectly calm. The Concordia hadn't moved, hadn't raised shields, hadn't responded in any way. It simply continued to exist, untouched, its hull pulsing with that same gentle blue-white light. High Counselor Zena's crystalline form vibrated with concern. First Marshal, stand down your forces. You're demonstrating exactly why the humans chose to approach us as they did. But Cord wasn't listening. Launch the quantum disruptors. They cannot defend against what they cannot predict. The dreadnoughts launched their most devastating weapons, missiles designed to tear apart the fabric of space-time itself. They streaked toward the Concordia in twisted contrails of impossible physics. Captain Chen sighed softly. We really hoped it wouldn't come to this. She raised her hand, and reality shifted. The missiles didn't explode. They didn't impact. They simply became something else. Beautiful crystalline structures that hung in space like frozen fireworks. The dreadnoughts themselves underwent a similar transformation, their weapons and armor becoming delicate artistic sculptures that celebrated life rather than dealing death. You see, Chen explained to the stunned council, we could have come with a fleet. We could have demonstrated this power from the beginning. But then you would have seen us as conquerors, as something to fear and resist. Instead, we came offering friendship, hoping you would understand that true power lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the wisdom to choose not to. Cord's chitinous armor rattled in rage. You've destroyed our strongest weapons. No, Chen corrected gently. We've shown you that they were never weapons at all, just matter and energy that could be reshaped into something better. Everything in this universe is connected. Every particle, every wave, every thought. Once you truly understand this, the very concept of weapons becomes meaningless. The tactical displays were showing similar scenes throughout Confederation space. Everywhere, the martial clades had tried to assert military dominance. Their weapons had been transformed into art. Not destroyed, not disabled, but changed into something that celebrated the very thing they had tried to destroy. This, Zena realized, her crystalline structure resonating with sudden understanding. This is why you sent only one ship. You never needed more. Chen smiled. We sent one ship because that was enough to carry the message. The message isn't about power or technology or even knowledge. It's about choice. Every species, every civilization reaches this point. The moment when they must choose between fear and understanding, between separation and connection. Around the chamber, representatives watched in awe as the transformed warships began to pulse with the same gentle light as the Concordia. They weren't being destroyed or controlled. They were being offered the chance to become something new. Your weapons, Chen continued, were built from fear. Fear of each other, fear of scarcity, fear of death itself. But once you understand the true nature of reality, you realize that fear was always an illusion. There is no separation. There is no scarcity. There is only the infinite possibility of what we can become together. First Marshal Cord stared at the displays, his armor slowly stopping its angry rattling. But what do we become without our strength? Stronger, Chen replied simply. Strong enough to choose peace, not because you're forced to, but because you understand war was never the answer to begin with. Throughout Confederation space, the transformed ships hung like newborn stars, their light a promise of what could be. They were no longer weapons of war, but they were far from powerless. They had become something else entirely, monuments to the moment when fear gave way to understanding. The choice that humanity had hoped for was playing out exactly as they had planned, not through force, not through overwhelming numbers, but through the simple, undeniable demonstration that there was a better way. The age of warfare was ending, not with a bang, but with a transformation, and it had taken only one ship to light the way. 1 year after the arrival of the Concordia, the Galactic Confederation had become something its founders could never have imagined. The Central Command Station, once a fortress of power and protocol, now served as a hub of learning and transformation. Its halls were filled with beings from across the galaxy, each discovering their own way to interact with the fundamental fabric of reality. High Counselor Zenevek stood in what had once been the Security Council chamber, watching as a group of former Martial Clade warriors worked with their one-time enemies to create a new form of art, collaborative sculptures that existed simultaneously in multiple dimensions. Still surprised by how it all turned out, Captain Chen appeared beside her, having long since abandoned the need for dramatic entrances. Not surprised, Zena's crystalline form sparkled with amusement. Grateful. Though I do have one last question, one that's been bothering me since the day you arrived. You want to know why we really sent only one ship? Yes. Even with all you've taught us about the nature of reality and consciousness, surely having more vessels would have been prudent. Chen's smile held centuries of wisdom. Would you like to see the real reason? It's time you knew anyway. She gestured, and the air between them became a window into Earth's orbit. What Zena saw made her crystalline structure vibrate in shock. Thousands of ships hung in Earth's orbit, each one unique, each one pulsing with that now familiar blue-white light. But they weren't military vessels or cargo ships. They were something else entirely. Those aren't ships, Chen explained. At least, not in the way you're thinking. They're possibilities. Each one represents a different potential future, a different way of understanding reality. We sent the Concordia because it represented the possibility we hoped you would choose, the path of peaceful contact and shared understanding. The view shifted, showing the ships in more detail. Each one seemed to exist partially in dimensions beyond normal space-time, their forms suggesting possibilities that defied conventional physics. Had you chosen aggression, Chen continued, a different ship would have made contact. Had you chosen isolation, another. Had you chosen exploitation, yet another. The Concordia wasn't just a vessel, it was a choice made manifest, a symbol of the future we hoped to build together. You mean? Zena's voice trailed off as understanding dawned. Yes, we didn't send a fleet because we were never going to force any particular outcome. Each species, each civilization must choose its own path. We simply, Chen smiled, stacked the deck a little by making the choice for peace and understanding the most attractive option. Around them, the chamber had filled with representatives from dozens of species, all working together in ways that would have been unthinkable a year ago. The former barriers between species, between minds, between possibilities, had dissolved in the light of true understanding. And now, Zena asked, watching as a young martial clade warrior helped a Silicon Collective member understand a particularly complex piece of reality manipulation. Now, Chen's eyes sparkled. We begin the real work. What you've seen so far, the technology, the transformations, the understanding, that was just the beginning. The universe is far more magnificent and mysterious than any of us imagined. And together, we can explore it in ways none of us could have achieved alone. The view of Earth's orbit faded, but its impression remained. Thousands of possible futures, each waiting to be chosen, each offering a different path to understanding. The Concordia hadn't just been a ship, it had been an invitation to choose the best of all those possibilities. There's something else you should know, Chen added softly. Those ships in Earth's orbit, they're not just ours anymore. They're growing, changing, incorporating the understanding and possibilities of every species that chooses to join us. The future we're building isn't just human or confederation. It's something entirely new. Outside the station's windows, the transformed Marshall clade vessels still hung like stars, their light now indistinguishable from that of the Concordia. They were no longer monuments to war transformed into art. They had become seeds of new understanding, each one ready to bloom into its own possibility. We sent one ship, Chen concluded, because one possibility is all you need, if it's the right one. And look what that possibility has grown into. Around them, the station hummed with the energy of countless minds learning, growing, understanding. The age of separation was over. The age of possibility had begun. And it had all started with a single ship carrying not weapons or demands, but something far more powerful, the possibility of what they could become together. The future they had chosen was more beautiful than any of them could have imagined alone. And that, after all, had been the point all along.